Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. In this video I'm going to show how I took a Stormraven, which is a normal plastic Games Workshop kit, and kitbashed it into the much bigger Storm Eagle that you can buy from Forgeworld. So this is for my Death Guard, like a lot of the channel has been lately. If you've watched the channel a lot, you'll know that I'm expanding my Death Guard army to about 10,000 points to take on a Warlord Titan that a friend's got and the associated stuff alongside. So I originally bought this kit to be going with my Blood Angel army that I was doing and decided, you know what, I'm going to kitbash this up into the larger Forgeworld model. The initial build is exactly following the normal build instructions, so nothing unique when we're building the core of the kit. What we're looking to do is build component parts of it so that we can then build off of that and get it ready for the expansion you're going to see. So in the initial build, the only thing we're doing differently is the missile pods that go under the wings. We need to cut these off and cut these down because in here are going to go the twin las cannons that the Storm Eagle is actually equipped with rather than the missile pods that the Stormraven has. So you come to the point when you've got these kind of four main component parts. The front hull, we've not put the little gun turret on the top because we're going to put a normal access hatch. We've done the wings, again with the missile changes, and we've done the back exactly as. Now I have put in the multi-melter at the front because the Storm Eagle comes with that. But we're not going to stick together the hull because this is the part we're going to expand. So now we're going to get your friend plasticard. I've taken a plasticard that's a little bit thinner than the main plastic of the body. It's going to need to be fairly rigid. I've put it into the body as you've seen there, just drawn around it, and I'm cutting out around the shape of the body panel where the rear wing section, if that's what you call it, goes onto the main hull, because this is what we're going to expand out, and we need this shape cutting out so that that rear section has got something to slot onto in a bit. So you'll see kind of where we're going. Now when we've done that, we're going to clean up the inside of the body because this is where we're going to slide another section of plasticard in. So we are going to thin up the body a little bit at the front, but it really doesn't make a difference. But what we don't want is all those raised areas because we want a nice flat smooth infill place we're going to do. So dig out the plasticard again. You can see here we're going to just push it into the body. You can see to the side of plasticard where we've made the template we're going to look at in a minute. And then it's working out kind of the angle that you want to do and how long you want to make the body. Now there wasn't anything precise here. I didn't go and measure up a Forgeworld kit. I literally just kind of looked and thought, that looks about right, let's do it by that kind of length. I can't even remember what the distance in centimetres it was. I think it was about 6 or 7 centimetres. I could measure it up. But we've done that, and then when I've got the length right and where I want the angle, I've taken that corner template thing that we made, and now I'm going to slice the end of this panel off using that kind of template so that it'll fit on with the rear section. So that's what we're doing, some templates. A little bit of this is by eye. It is fairly precise, we're making sure we're being fairly clean and tidy. But the beauty, I suppose I've said before about doing Death Guard, is if you make little mistakes you can sort of fill the gaps in. But you can see here it fits actually very, very neatly and snugly, which is real positive. So if you wanted to make this for a normal Marine army, you could do, just skip some of the nurgly bits later on. So try and be as precise as possible, but always bear in mind when you're doing a Death Guard kit bash or a Nurgle kit bash, if something goes a little bit wrong, doesn't matter because you can nurglify it up. So you can see the principle of what we're going for here with how the plasticard panel is going to hold that rear section in, and you can see the length of the body we've expanded. Now if that's too much for you, too little, you could shrink that around. Now we've glued this on. I did leave this overnight because again this is a fairly structural piece, so we don't want to be going at it when everything's still wet and damp. And now it's about just filling in the top of that hull and filling in the bottom of that hull. What you'll find, because of the angle of that rear kind of wing fin, you need to put an angle into that plasticard to slot it in underneath because the panels are not all complete flat sections, so just bear that in mind. Now here's a tip, another one of my favourite hobby things to use, blue tack. When you're putting the bottom panel in, I wanted it to fit into the hull, so some quite precise measuring to get it cut right so that it will be touching all around. Now obviously you need to be able to hold it and pull it in and out and hold it into place. Bit of blue tack stuck on the bottom gives you a handle to manoeuvre this kind of piece of plastic while you're getting it stuck into the body. Incredibly useful bit of hobby kit blue tack. If you don't have some, get some. The amount of usage you'll have for blue tack is incredible, and this is just obviously one of those. So plenty of glue onto this, don't be skimping on the glue. It'll just evaporate if you put too much on, but obviously do it in a well ventilated area, because if you're using kind of this volume of glue in a small area, you're going to give yourself a headache. It's not particularly nice stuff, obviously. And then just use that there, hold it in place, and 30 seconds or so, and it'll start to set. When it is set in place, just give it a bit of filing down, you know, get some detail in. There are some raggy bits you'll have, you won't have cut it perfectly smooth, and you can just then smooth it off against the model and make it kind of pristine as possible. Now you could leave it looking quite raggy and it wouldn't matter because again it's Death Guard, but particularly if you're going to do this for a normal Marine army, that's great. Now you can see here where the wings are supposed to go in. They're meant to slot in at that first initial panel, and I did experiment with putting them right to the back of the build, but then you would need probably a secondary wing set at the very front, so I kind of settled on halfway into the extended hull that we've done there. Now all you need to do to get them to touch fit is underneath you've got these two kind of triangular sections with studs and bolts on them. If you just slice those off, because this is the section that's going to have the initial contact point for you to glue the wings on at the very beginning. So all done there is again lots of plastic glue. Use that triangular section to glue it in place. Let it set overnight again because you're going to need to make sure it's really sealed. And what we're taking now is some milliput. Milliput's just a 2-part modelling compound. I get through tons of it. If you've watched the channel, you'll see I use it all the time. And this is just going to fill all those gaps, but also be another way of sealing the wings and things down. So taking it, put a decent amount into there, and then just use, I'm using here a sculpting tool on my fingers, just to smooth and shape that area. Now with this stuff you get quite a lot of working time with it, so you don't need to rush too much. You can take your time, you know, it'll set in a couple of hours, so if you do make a mistake and you've put too much on, nothing wrong with that. You can just carve that back off, stick it onto the ball of milliput we've seen there, and continue to use it. So you will get a good couple of hours of working time. It can be very sticky and claggy to start with, you might want to leave it a little bit just to start curing, but in this you are just sort of gap filling. So we've made the general shape you can see there to hold the two wings on, and now I'm just going to go around and fill in the bits where the tail section hits, because I want to make a nice little shape there and smooth it off. We're also going to fill in underneath, so you can see there, the front sections of where those kind of vents are, and we're also going to fill in the section where the kind of air vent goes, where normally, where you can see the turret hole, the turret sits in. So I'm just filling that with the milliput. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you will see that I use a lot of blue stuff, and I'm going to go through exactly what that is, but what I've got here is a blue stuff mould for las cannons, which I've taken from this actual Stormraven kit, and I actually moulded them up for the previous build I did when I kit bashed a Legion falchion for the Death Guard. So I'm just using some of that milliput that we've taken, mix it with the green stuff, and I'm casting up those guns, and you will see them again later. So now you can see I've stuck the wings on, the milliput's kind of sealed it on there, we're in a good shape, but I don't want a big flat panel on the side because this model's covered in little bits of detail and little bits of armour panels. So again, just taking a few measurements here, we're trying to work out what pieces I'm going to do, and I cut out some kind of I don't know what you would call this shape, rectangles, but with slopey sides. I'm sure there is a word for that. I should probably go ask one of the kids, they'll know, they're doing maths. But I'm just cutting these out and really just making some interesting panels for the side so it breaks up those flat kind of armour panels. I've done that. I've also stuck some in the top. You can see some little squares there in between. And the other thing I've also done is scored the top of that milliput just to put a line down and give some visual interest on there. Now this is a Death Guard Rhino door from forgeworld. 2 of these come in a kit. The first one I used on the Legion falchion that I kit bashed a couple of weeks ago. Again, that's on the channel, so I'll try and link that down below. And just using this here to make the top of this hull look a bit interesting. Now you could put the original little gun turret that comes on, but I wanted to make it visually quite different from the Stormraven, just to put a bit of interest. Now this is a part of the kit that if you've never built a knight, you're not going to have one of these spare knocking around, but I'm sure you could pick a piece up off eBay or something like that, or someone you know has probably bought a knight, but this is just a spare missile pod from a knight. I've done quite a lot of knights for the Death Guard army, but I didn't use any of the missile pods on top of the knight, so simply knock that together, blob of green stuff to glue that on. Now about detailing, you don't necessarily have to do this part, but all I'm doing is drilling some very small holes into the corners of these plasticard panels that I've put on. Because if you look at the wings and certain sections of it, they either have rivets or holes drilled in, so it just helps to blend it. Now over the course of a few evenings, I cast up these las cannons out of the milliput and green stuff mix, so it's somewhere 50-50 in between, and now we're cleaning it up to put the twin las cannons on each wing. With the actual Stormraven model, you get 2 las cannons, so you won't be able to make this model with just that. Now you could obviously go buy some parts, but I've done some green stuff moulds, and it's just an easier way of getting enough las cannons for the build that you want to do. Now I'm just cutting them down to an appropriate length, just after the initial barrel and before you get to the power packs. You could do whatever length and size you want, obviously. Now here we are about the blue stuff moulding again. I will link down below for about what blue stuff is, and there's a blue stuff moulding video I've done which is quite useful. Now these are moulds of the Nurgle parts from a Glockkin model. I used the Glockkin model to build a lot of my knights and some kitbashes there, so I made these moulds months ago and I keep reusing them. Really, really useful for making Nurgle parts. You can see here there's the 3 different types of putty I was talking about. Green stuff on the left, milliput on the right, and the mix in the middle. Now the best way of making these moulds is actually with green stuff, because you want these Nurgle bits to be flexible. Now I'm going to show you a way of making your own little pustules and stuff if you don't have these moulds in a second, and I do both on this kit. So now I'm taking those moulded pieces that I've cast up and just sticking them into random parts of the model, different sizes. Once I've done that, obviously I do this across the whole model, but it's about damaging up and cutting some corners off and just battle damaging the flyer a little bit. You don't want to go too far, well you might want to go loads, but I just do a decent bit of damage all around the model. Take a pin drill, drill some like bullet holes or bullet impacts around it to make this look weather beaten and battle scarred, because it's not going to be pristine, because this is again a Nurgle flyer. So once you've gone around and done that, this is the part where if you want to make your own pustules, all I've done is put some lumps of milliput in various places, and I've taken some balls of milliput that I've made previously when I've been using milliput or green stuff, and just then pushing them into that milliput patch, using a sculpting tool to dot up and make some interesting texture on the end, and that's how you can make your own kind of pustules for Death Guard or for any Nurgle. So we've gone around and we've Nurglified the flyer like that, all around it, you know, messed it up a little bit. Now you can see here where the original mounting point for the flying part is, it's quite at the front of the hull, and it will work, but it'll put a lot of stress on it. So what I tried to do then is find the balancing point of this flyer, so that it would balance quite comfortably. Obviously worked out where that was, and I'm just making then my own like pin point where the flying stand is going to go in the future, because you want a kind of nice balance area rather than putting excess stress on the model from where it is. So just a big lump of milliput, push the end of the flying stand into it when it's wet, and then just let it set there. Fine, job done, we've made a new part. Now this is the last part now of the actual kit bash, as you want to call it. So I'm taking some liquid green stuff that Games Workshop sell, and we're just pasting this around these green stuff panels of the Nurgle bits that we put on, to take it from the flat panel you glued it onto to the sort of millimetre raised bit of green stuff you put on, because you don't want that sort of sharp transition where you go from a flat panel to this little mill of green stuff, because it's a bit too stark. So I'm painting this on to make a nice sort of gradiated section from the panel of the armour up to there. And what you can also do is just paint some of this liquid green stuff on in random patches on flat armour panels or anywhere you want, to sort of show the beginning of the Nurgleization of the model. So hopefully you can see now, you can see those kind of really push-juley bits. I've done some sections of the armour panel where it's just a little bit manky, where I've put some green stuff nowhere near those push-juley bits. And now we've undercoated it black and then lead belcher, because I love painting off metallic base colours, works really well for 40k. And we're now sticking on Agrellan earth in patches around the model again, close to the areas we've just Nurglified, and this will dry to a really nice cracked effect you can see here, and start to give some broken panels. And again, do it around the areas you've put the Nurgle pustules on, but also do it on some flat panels, and it gives the idea that then it's in a stage of progress of demonic possession or rot or whatever. So we're not going to go through the painting scheme on this in real depth. It's exactly the same real painting scheme that I've done for all my Death Guard, so I'll link it down below for the Death Guard actual troops painting scheme, but it is the same, just replicated on a larger scale. A couple of differences later we'll go through. So we started off with the Death Guard green, just kind of a stippling base coat effect across the whole model. Stippling is really good because you're sort of stabbing it on. Don't worry about missing bits, because if the metal shows through, that'll look quite nice later and rusty. So we've covered that. You can see it's not a consistent coverage when you look at the colour here. There is some bits where silver will show through, some bits where it's more thorough. We're going through the Death Guard green, then we're taking that Rakarth flesh colour onto all the pustule areas, painting the pustules with yellow, because that works really nicely, and we put some Death Guard green colours on later. Taking that purpley colour with all the kind of tentacly bits that we've put on. And then it's detailing, so we've done some bone across the skull sections and some of the skulls that are moulded in. We've then taken some red to do the sensors, and then just Macragge blue across the window frame. Now you can, I didn't build the crew in here, you can build the crew, you can keep that frame open and clear. I'm not into that, I just quite like gluing cabins shut and that kind of thing. Now here, when we've done all the base coats, I've done a wash of the Vallejo game wash. Now if you've watched the channel before, you'll look on there and go, that looks totally different to how I've done the game wash before. And it is because I put it through an airbrush. I've never really airbrushed washes too much before, but I got a new Green Stuff World airbrush head and just thought I'd give it a go at spraying the wash through. It's given a totally different effect to what it does when you paint it up by hand. It doesn't really matter actually, it looks quite nice, and there's nothing wrong with having slightly different effects in an army, particularly like Death Guard. Now, I like to experiment. So now it's going back over all the colours you've already done, and this is just dry brush city. Lots and lots and lots of dry brushing, building up the layer of the paints back gradually. So we want this to be like a highlight layer. We're not using any different colours that we've already used. We're going over real kind of gently, slowly and gradually building that colour back up on the armour panels. If you go too heavy, you might notice in the background we're painting on some of these, I've just got a bit of blue foam from a figure case that I've cut before to get models in, and you can just run that blue foam over somewhere if you put too much on, just to quickly get that paint off, or even just smudge that paint across the armour. So see there, just dry brushing everything up, same process. I've put some silver across the gun barrels, and now it's just really going across the whole model with the same colours we've already used, just to bring those layers up. Now, you are only using exactly the same colours, but because of the nature of the wash we've done, and maybe the 2 or 3 layers of dry brushing you might do, if you look on the armour there, you can see 2 or 3 different colours of green, but there aren't 2 or 3 different colours of green, it's just the one. And what is quite useful though is the Rakarth flesh that we've used to do the kind of pustule parts. You can very, very lightly drop some of that on top of the normal green armour panels, and it looks like an extra highlight layer. So like I say, I'm not going to go into massive detail on the painting scheme here because I've covered it multiple times on the channel. So check out my Death Guard and my Nurgle Knight playlists that I've done. There's lots of other pieces in there, but it is following exactly the same kind of colour scheme as we do it. Only going down to difference in a minute when we're going to look at some of the wash layers and we look at extra colours we're going to use. So really follow through the whole model using the same colours, the same techniques, and you will see multiple tones build up. It looks really nice. Here's the first colour we haven't already used in the initial stages, which is a Magos purple. I really like using the contrast paints. It's kind of like a halfway between a wash and a paint, and it just gives you some different colours into that kind of texture, and it starts giving a real nice bruised, slightly demonic effect on it, and you can drop it in as a highlight, not a highlight, a shade into cracks. Now, your friend when you're painting Death Guard is Nurgle's Rot. I'm dropping this onto all the pustule areas we've used, but it is a brilliant one for if you've made any mistakes while you're modelling and you're converting the piece up and you've got something you don't particularly like, that's fine. At this point, whack some Nurgle's Rot on it. Looks perfectly Nurgly, covers up your mistakes, job done. Really, really useful. And I drop it into all the bullet holes and things like that as well. Very quickly doing some sort of burn effect on the melters and the fuel veins using 3 really nice shade colours, Druchii Violet, Drakenhof Nightshade and Nuln Oil. I might do a short at some point actually just showing you how a bit more of this technique. I'm just whizzing through it, but it is using all 3 to kind of blend and make it. And then we're back to the finished model again. So I hope you liked that. I really enjoy how it's extended the whole of it. It's quite nice doing a Forge World model sort of homage out of a cheaper plastic kit. I'm really looking forward to getting the troops into this and getting it in game. So if you did enjoy that, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Check me out on Instagram and Facebook. You'll see some of the other stuff I do. And yeah, I'll see you next time.